Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Football Talk with Hawk. Week 15 is over. Week 15 is done. What a wild weekend. What a wild weekend. More injuries again, taking out potential key players for week 16 matchups with so many playoff implications on the line. So many big matchups coming up next week. Teams that are in the playoff hunt facing off against each other. The perfect type of winter football. Football fans, that is what we have. We have got what we want. Something amazing has happened over the last 3 weeks. The teams in the NFC finally started to win. There is a legitimate shot that we could actually not have a team in the playoffs under 500 in the NFC. And there is a very legitimate shot that you will have 5 teams over 500 potentially miss. Not 5 anymore. Let's go 4, definitely 3 that are over 500 in the AFC not even get into the playoffs. What great battles there are. Everybody says it's a bad year because it's so muddled. There's no clear team. How about you look at it from a optimist standpoint instead of a pessimist? That means that we've got a lot of good football. That there are teams playing their hearts out through 4 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs. That's what we have. That's what we have, football fan. Teams that are leaving everything out there on the field for you to win the game. Man, I love football. All right, let's dive into it. Of course, I'm going to talk about the game that I was most excited for, and I think most of America was. I love Stephen A. Smith to death when it comes to the Cowboy stuff, ain't going to lie. But I called it. I told you guys last week, Dallas will not play in Buffalo. Dallas will not play in Buffalo. And to all the idiot Dallas fans that think that Gilliam was being dirty when he got thrown into the back of Micah Parsons' legs, yeah, go try that wine train somewhere else. The guy got pushed into the pile and rolled up on Micah's legs. You can, stop the stupidity right there. There's no room for that. You can be fans, but you can't be that ignorant. We got another player suspended for the year, KZ, for his hit on Michael Pittman Jr. in the Colts versus Steelers game, where the quarterbacks of old are blaming Minshew for the entire thing. Because Minshew never should have put that ball where it was and never should have put his receiver in the compromising position. Fully agree. I talked about it last week, backbone of football, old school football. What we need. If you haven't listened to those, go back and listen to them. It's what we're missing right now as football fans. It's what we grew up with. It's what made us fall in love with the game. Yesterday had a lot of very interesting things. You had a monsoon down in Carolina. And then Carolina in the all black, which, by the way, I like that uniform setup. But Carolina and the All Blacks take down the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith all of a sudden is on the hot seat. I did say that a couple weeks ago, where maybe that's what they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I would not fire Arthur Smith, I'll be honest with you. I would tell him he's got to get a defensive coordinator. In defensive coordinator news, I know this is college and not the NFL, Tom Allen, of who I do love, do not get me wrong, I love Tom Allen. I just thought his tactics as a head coach didn't coincide with what we needed. He wasn't cutthroat enough as a head coach. Even in the Indiana Hoosier victories, we'd let teams back into games, and all of a sudden we'd have to play harder and people would get hurt. And honestly, that's what happened a lot. Kellen Lewis, Michael Penix. You know, that's just what happened. But now Tom Allen is coaching the Penn State defense, taking over for Manny Diaz, who has moved on. And it's a really smart move by James Franklin. Yes, this is your college tidbit. It's a really smart move for James Franklin. Bringing in a coach that he highly respects to coach his defense, of which the Indiana Hoosier defense has never been questioned. Their schemes have never been questioned. They've always been one of the most aggressive, one of the quickest, one of the fastest, one of the most opportunistic. And now you've got Penn State with that defensive coordinator, and I don't think they're going to miss a beat. Penn State will continue to be linebacker university, and more corners will come out of Penn State. Just watch. But all right, back on to football. So defensive coordinator-wise for the Atlanta Falcons, I would say that if Matt Eberflus gets fired, which evidently is a question mark right now because of what they've done at the end of the year to this point, it's a question mark. I'll give you that, but I'd still go after Jim Harbaugh. I'd still do something else. He's coaching for his life right now. When he's not coaching for his life, is he just going to go back to winning only 3 or 4 games? It's a legit question. It's a legit question. Todd Bowles looks like he is coaching himself into staying for another year. I'll be honest, that Green Bay Tampa Bay game was a fun game to watch if you're a Tampa Bay fan, and a head scratcher if you're a Green Bay fan. Dennis Allen, a lot of people think he's done in New Orleans. I don't know if they're going to move on from him, but if they do, if I'm Arthur Smith, I'm hiring Dennis Allen. Defensively, he just needs a little bit of help. Just needs a little bit of help. So I'd absolutely, 100%, keep Arthur Smith in Atlanta and get another defensive coordinator. Get your starting quarterback. Whether you bring him in like a Kirk Cousins or you draft him one way or another. But Arthur Smith, after that loss to Carolina in a complete downpour, 9-7, is supposedly on the hot seat. And if they finish out the year going 0-3, I guess I could see it happen. I guess I could see it happen. But, all right, so we move on. So Tampa Bay, Green Bay game. Tampa Bay gets the big W. Big W for them. And a really big blow to the Packers. See, the Packers still play the Panthers, the Vikings, and the Bears. Now, I am not giving the Bears a shoe-in. They both play outdoor. It's Week 18 in Lambeau Field, but they're both young teams. So I am not giving that game as a shoe-in, and they're in Minnesota. Minnesota only plays division opponents for the final 3 weeks. They play Detroit twice, home and away, and they play Green Bay at home. I really think they go 0-3. I really do. I think the Detroit Lions are looking at where they're at now with Philadelphia losing. This is what's key. With Philadelphia losing, again, the Lions going 3-0, which is going to take a road win over Dallas, and I don't like that Lion team against Dallas unless they do what Buffalo did. If they just run it down Dallas' throats and shorten the game, they could pull out a sneaky win just like they did in Week 1 against Kansas City. But I don't like the Detroit versus Dallas matchup. I really don't. But Dallas kind of has a leg up over Philly now. Philly losing to Seattle boosts the Seattle chances for playoffs because the Rams are looking good. At this point, I would believe the Rams are in. They have Thursday night football at home against New Orleans. That, to me, is a W. Then in Week 17, they're on the road against the Giants. That one, West Coast traveling east. Depends on what the weather's like, what's going on. But honestly, I'll take Sean McVay with Matthew Stafford over Brian Daboll with Tommy DeVito. Just saying. And then they're going to lose Week 18 because that's against San Francisco. And, well, Kyle Shanahan just has Sean McVay's number. But Los Angeles, the Rams can still get in the playoffs. And I really don't think there's much of a team anywhere that wants to play them. Especially if they're not outdoors. You don't want to play them in a dome. I've said the Detroit and Rams matchup, to me, would be the worst matchup for the Lions in week number 1. They can beat the Seahawks. They can beat the Packers. They can beat the Vikings. The Rams, to me, are the most dangerous matchup for a round number 1 as you can get. And originally, I thought because of how the Packers had been playing, the Packers were a shoo-in to be above 500, get the 9-8, 6 seed. That's what I said last week. After their loss, listen, Carolina, say anything you want to. Okay? Carolina, at home, has 2 wins. Carolina, at home, has 2 wins. And they got home games against Green Bay. They got a home game against Tampa Bay. And if I'm not mistaken, Jacksonville. If my memory serves me correct. Don't quote me on that one, but I think that's the other one they have. But nonetheless, they're home. Listen, being home matters. These guys are playing. Reich is fired. Young is settling down a little. Do I think he's great? No. We'll see what he is next year with whoever they get for head coach. I heard last week that this year is a really bad year for coaching candidates. And I'm going, huh? No, what it is it's a bad year for the guys you know. It's going to be more guys like Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, Matt Eberflus. Guys, random coordinators just getting stuff. Listen, Rich Bisaccia should be interviewed by everybody and brought in to be a head coach. Antonio Pierce has brought in Marvin Lewis and Tom Coughlin to advise him in how to be a head coach. Somebody should go get Marvin Lewis. Why not? A leader of men. Go, where's Mike Zimmer? I know, I can hear it. People are going to say, defensive coach. Yeah. That built a really good offensive line because he understands line play. Had a really good offensive line, really good running back, had a solid offensive coordinator, and I still think Bridgewater, before the injury, and I'm going only before the injury, Bridgewater was not a problem. Bridgewater was not a problem at all. And he had a playoff team. You listen, you got guys in Carolina. Jim Caldwell is in Carolina right now. Jim Caldwell. Where's John Fox? Bill O'Brien's over in New England. I know people are like, why would you hire Bill O'Brien? Maybe because he took the Texans to the playoffs with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with Matt Schaub, Deshaun Watson. I don't know, maybe because he won division titles and made the playoffs. Just maybe. Just maybe that's the reason. I think we're sitting in an era where, as I said last week, going backwards isn't going to be wrong. Going old school is not going to be wrong. You've got a bunch of these guys who could easily come in, build foundations, set foundations, create the teams, build the teams. Like, what are we waiting on? Why does it seem so hard for people to understand guys that know football are the guys you want? Like, I don't know what it would take. I don't. But Rex Ryan understands line play. I know. Defensive coach, blah, 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 blah. Rex Ryan went to the AFC Championship game with freaking Mark Sanchez. Okay? Had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. Had one of the best defenses. What is so hard to understand about this for some of these NFL owners? Yeah, Rex Ryan is a polarizing figure. Guess what? Some teams need that. The Chargers need a polarizing figure in LA. The Panthers need that to keep them relevant, where seemingly their fans don't want to show up. Like, legitimately. Maybe it's time to go old school. Because these guys are going to coach toughness. Mike Zimmer, Marvin Lewis, Rex Ryan, Bill O'Brien. Get guys that are willing to be tough and play gritty. Maybe that's all we need again. A couple more linebacker head coaches in the NFL. We got Vrabel. We got Antonio Pierce. Let's keep it going. Keep it going. Bring more in. Absolutely. Bring more in. I don't know what's going to happen. The way this coaching carousel is going to play out is really interesting. It's very intriguing because the records are not the records of the past. We're not talking about a bunch of 5 and 11 teams or 4 and 12 teams or 3 and 13 teams. We're potentially talking about 7-win teams. That's what we're talking about. 7-win teams. 7 and 10. If you're in the NFC, you missed the playoffs by 1 game, maybe 2. That's going to be the splits this year. The splits are horrendous. It's not going to look normal. You look at a game like Washington versus the Rams. Washington was outplayed from start to finish in that game. If Ron Rivera is not fired today, they're just waiting till the end of the season. They got run out of that building. Completely run out of that building. There is no way in the world that Washington looked anywhere near ready to play that game against the Rams. You look at the game, the 49ers versus the Cardinals. Cardinals jump out. They lose it really quick. Marcus Brown again goes down, hurt my fantasy team. Shocker. They weren't ready to play. Gannon's defense. Why can't your defense hold people? Like, these are the questions that are starting to get asked, and they're starting to get asked early. Remember back in, the mid-2000s and the 2010s, what we were saying about coaches was, let's see what they look like after Thanksgiving. If it was a new coach, we knew you had to instill the culture, instill the attitude and the mindset of what you were going to be. So we didn't worry about the early games. We looked at the end of the year, your final 6 games. Did we get blown out? Were you playing close? Were the guys playing inspired? Were your schemes good, but you just didn't have the skill players for what you were trying to accomplish? That's what we looked at. And now you got guys, Brandon Staley, Gannon, Saleh. Yeah, I'm throwing Saleh in there. I'm sorry. His Jet defense dropped the ball against a Miami team without Tyreek Hill. You had one job. Make Tua beat you. Make Tua beat you. And you let Waddle beat you. With horrible coverage displays a horrible defensive plan. Robert Saleh very well should be fired. And yes, I just said may should. He very well should be fired. Because his defense looked horrendous. If they lose to the Patriots, the Browns, listen, there's a reality with this. Maybe Robert Saleh is just a really good defensive coordinator. And guess what? There's a chance that that could be the case. The more and more this keeps going, the more and more they keep losing, the more and more teams keep questioning what's going on, the more and more you got to realize, like, it's not good. Robert Saleh's Jet team, regardless of the quarterback, the defense hasn't looked good. And that's his side of the ball. You just got to be straight up honest about it. It's where it's at right now. All right, so let's go to the AFC. Let's go to the AFC on the playoff side. So the Seahawks get the big win Monday Night Football. Yes, I know this is still NFC, but the way that this is going to play out makes the Seahawks games matter, which are against NFC or AFC teams. They have the Steelers and the Titans on the road. Okay. And then they have Arizona on the road. Sorry, Steelers at home, Titans on the road, and then Arizona on the road. So the Steelers and the Titans have a really big opportunity in the AFC to affect an NFC playoff team. The Steelers basically shot themselves in the leg by not playing a brand of offense the whole time. They jump out to a lead and then gave it away. Mike Tomlin, I'm sorry. You're going to have your first below 500 year, more than likely. And honestly, you kind of deserve it. Because this just don't work now. That game against the Colts, they were up. I don't want to hear it was early. You guys, if you've watched the Colts teams, they can't come back unless you give it to them. And they gave it to them. All of a sudden, they go into a soft zone, and then they just keep messing up. They're not playing their hard, tight defense. Their offensive game plan wasn't bad. Pickens still torched the Colts defense. But it wasn't great. And I watched a lot of the run plays for the Steelers. I was wondering what they were doing. Like, stop with the dang misdirection. Good grief. Nobody's misdirecting anything. Just run it. Split the dang defensive tackles and run the ball right in the middle. Just go. The Steelers have the Bengals, the Seahawks, and the Ravens. That's what's coming up for the Steelers. I have a very slight hunch they're going to go 0-3, and this is why. Zach Taylor has the Bengals playing lights out. absolute lights out. I believe 100% the Bengals are a hungry team for the playoffs. And they will, I believe the Bengals will get there. With Jake Browning and with everything else that they are, they'll get there. That game matters for both teams. Because the Steelers can still win out. They lose head-to-head against the Colts now. They lose head-to-head against the Texans. Like, there's not a lot that would give you hope as a Steeler fan. Like, their playoff chances were really dashed. And I mean really dashed. But technically they can still make it. Now, a team that just waited too long to make their move, I think, is the Broncos. They are one of the teams that will end up above 500 and not get in. Technically, the Steelers could be one as well. The Jaguars, let's just be honest, the game against the Bengals hurt the most. The game against the Browns, I would have signed another quarterback and just played against Joe Flacco however you would have, and had Trevor Lawrence ready for this week. Trevor Lawrence now in concussion protocol. So their grasp on the number one spot is a little shaky. Just a little shaky. And if I remember, if they play the Panthers like I thought, I believe they play Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, the Panthers, and then the Titans. If I remember correctly. It's not an easy road. The Colts play the Falcons, the Raiders at home. They're at Atlanta, home against the Raiders, home against the Texans. The Texans play the Browns. Do they play the Titans at home? The NFL has done this a lot this year, where there's a week break and then they play another division rival right after. Because the Colts played the Titans. Oh, no, it was a bigger break than that because they played the Titans week 5. So, yeah, that wasn't that. But they're doing it with the Lions. They're doing it with the Eagles and Giants as well, where they play one game against somebody else and then they come back and they play against each other again. Can't remember what the Week 17 game is for the Texans. I want to say Titans, but nonetheless, the Week 18 game, should things play out, let's just say, remember, everybody in the AFC South is currently at 8-6. With 3 games left, everybody's at 8-6. The leader is Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a complete 1-game lead over the Colts. If the Colts want to beat the Jags, they have to be a game better. For Indianapolis, this week is the biggest week. Now, why do I say that? Because you lose this week, you give everybody else, basically the Jaguars, only have to win one more game. In a sense. Because then week 18 against the Texans are going for winning the division. They beat the Colts in that week, they win the division. I know, it's weird. The way these tiebreakers are working out is really interesting. Get this, Miami, I still think is only going to be a wild card team. That's what's even more wild. And some of you are going, huh? Here, listen. Miami plays Dallas this week, who's going to be pissed off because they just got beaten up by Buffalo and run over by Buffalo. So now you've got a Miami team with Tyreek Hill, which should be better. He'll probably be about 90%. But still, you got a Miami team now that better protect Tua, because Parsons and Lawrence are going to be absolutely outraged. And Dan Quinn is going to be ready to stop this high-flying offense because that secondary can play with them. They play Dallas, they play Baltimore, and they play Buffalo. I've got Miami Dolphins finishing the season 0-3. No kidding. 0-3. It's what I got them. Straight up. Okay? And Buffalo gets the Chargers, the Patriots, the Dolphins. Beat the Chargers because there won't be much of a competition. Beat the Patriots at home. And beat the Dolphins on the road. That game in Week 18, just this is how great this is. Week 18, Minnesota and Detroit could be for playoff positioning, potentially for both teams. I don't think so. I think Minnesota potentially loses out. Maybe they'll beat the Packers, but I think the Lions have their number. They're not good enough offensively. That's just where I'm at. Lions win both of their games against them. The Saints play the Falcons. If the Bucks can run the division, because the Bucks play the Jaguars this week, the Saints next week, both of those at home, and then at Carolina in Week 18. Carolina, to me, has a chance to win 2 more games, which the Bears don't want to have happen. Remember, Bears don't want this to happen. But they do have that chance. They really do. I could see Carolina pulling out another game easily, maybe 2. It's a football team. The team isn't bad. It's got pieces. Go on ESPN and look at the head coaching landing spots. The defense has Brian Burns, Derek Brown, and J.C. Horn on the defense. Offensively, you need an offensive line. Really need an offensive line and need a running back pretty badly. But honestly, you can work with free agency to get a solid back. You really can. You need 2 or 3 because they keep getting injured. Ask Baltimore. Baltimore knows a thing or 2 about running back injuries. They have 4 of them on IR. I don't think it's that many, but it seems like it. 4 of them on IR and 2 of them that actually play. Like, that's just what it feels like. And kudos to the Ravens for what they've done. The Eagles seemingly are the same way sometimes. It was the 49ers for 2 years. You know? Like, it's the way it is. Go get yourself a running back that can really run and be in your program, that can fit your system in free agency. You don't have a first-round pick. You're not changing quarterbacks, so you're just kind of going to have to build what's there. But the defense has got some solid pieces. No lie. All right. Final 2 minutes, 2-minute warning. Let's wrap this up. So, football was great this weekend. My picks were, I think I split them right down the middle because I had Steelers, I had the Giants, the Lions. I said Dolphins over Jets, but close. That one I was wrong on the close, but I got the Dolphins right. Then I had Buffalo and the Rams. So, no, I went 4-2. I went 4-2. I was wrong on Steelers, and I was wrong on the Giants. But I got the other picks correct. Here is what we're looking at for this week. We're going to go over some fantasy stuff tomorrow night because I got a gripe. I got a complaint I need to get off my chest. Yes, fantasy matters. Yes, it's important. And that'll be tomorrow's episode. But here's where we're at in football. The refs didn't change many games this weekend. The refs actually did a pretty good job. They're not going to affect the playoffs. I hope they don't. But I am saying they won't affect the playoffs. They're not going to determine who gets in and who gets out. Football's being played on the field. And you have got a logjam worse than LA traffic right now on both sides for the playoff picture. So how about, instead of worrying about the outside and the exterior things that could affect the game, just enjoy the game. We got Christmas coming up. It's going to be a great weekend. It's going to be an exciting weekend of football on Christmas Eve. Just enjoy it. Enjoy what's there. Because the playoff hunt is heating up. The playoff atmosphere has been electric in these stadiums. The teams are caring. It matters. And that's what we want as football fans. That's what we want. All right, guys, that is it for me. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you so much. If you're listening on YouTube, I appreciate you stopping by. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the like button too, as well, if you would please. Until tomorrow's episode, guys, have a fantastic Tuesday. I will see you guys tomorrow. Hawk out.